Welcome to the TriStar Podcast, where martial arts meets family, faith, and personal growth. Join Professor Brumitt and Professor Chris Beane as they share stories from the mat, lessons from life, and tools to help you and your family live like black belts on and off the mat. It's time to train the body, sharpen the mind, and strengthen the spirit right here on the TriStar Podcast. Hello, welcome back to the TriStar Podcast. Dwayne Brumitt here, obviously with Mr. Beane. Mr. Beane, our last podcast, we kind of talked a little bit about habits, how to build unstoppable kids and adults with habits. But this time, this is going to be the real secret, right? Systems.
That's right. Yeah. Today we're going even further. We're going to talk about the thing that actually keeps those habits alive, which, like you said, are systems. And, this is going to be part one of our two-part conversation on system.
Yeah, and I think most people fail because they're not able to create a habit, or it's too hard, and the problem is that they didn't create a system or a structure that they're able to build upon and have success in, right?
Well, and not only that, but people, I think sometimes think about or are confused a little bit about what habits are. Sometimes systems are all the way out, and it's not even something that's on anybody's radar. And so I think that having this conversation is important because it's going to give everybody kind of an idea, and we'll have some examples too, but an idea of what systems are as they relate to habits and developing yourself or furthering yourself in a upward trajectory. Yeah,
and so I guess you could say, like, in this episode, it's really all about building that environment, if you will, that is going to, I think, take willpower out of the question, but build some simple discipline, some predictability, some repeatability, which then actually gives you confidence.
Absolutely. And willpower, I think willpower is a good one. And I'm going to ask you a question about willpower because I know you have a couple of ideas about willpower too. But most people try to use willpower to get these habits to stick. And, as we know, willpower is not something that's going to be repeatable when that willpower fades, as it does. And so, again, I know willpower is something that you've talked about in the past. And can you give me an idea of how most people interact with willpower, and then why inevitably it fades for everybody?
Well, the problem is willpower, I believe, is a pretty weak muscle. And it's really if you would kind of phrase it as it's a facade. I have to have willpower to do this. Well, it's only going to take you so long. So what are they saying? They're saying, I have to have excitement. I have to have the gumption. I have to have whatever it is. But the problem is you really can't put a label on what willpower really is. And so therefore, because it's not, and I'm kind of giving things away, because it's not part of a system or a structure, it's just this feeling that we're operating on. And when I don't have the feeling anymore, then I am going to fail.
Yeah. Right. And so in that, it kind of relates to motivation, and motivation is something a lot of people wait for it to strike them with, but then they're never motivated, or that motivation fades, and then they just sit around and wait again, where really we need to have structure that we can be disciplined to follow a certain system in order for those things to happen on repeat. And then, we're not waiting for the willpower to be there or to fade, or we're not waiting for the motivation to be there or to fade, because we have the system, and we have a system, and then we're disciplined enough to fall back on that system in order for these things to happen on a sort of automatic type of way.
I couldn't agree more. And I think I feel like I say that every time on every single podcast when you make mention of something, but feelings fade, your willpower will fade. And just think of it as an adult. You go to work all day, then you come home and you've got to, especially if you have young kids like you do. I mean, I'm in a different season in my life, but when I was in that same season, yes, I was younger, so I had more quote unquote energy, which could maybe relate to or be referred to as willpower. But when you gotta go to work, come back home, and I don't want to say deal with the kids, but there's a lot of stuff that you have to do. And then by the end of the day, then you're trying to maybe pour a little bit into your spouse if you have anything left. And then from there, try to have some sort of willpower with whatever it is that you're wanting to do. I mean, it just doesn't, it doesn't work. That system, or that's, I should say, that feeling just, it falls apart. It's a terrible strategy.
Yeah, and I think that is the crux of why it doesn't matter if you're a kid or an adult, anywhere on that spectrum, the habits that you're trying to implement, they always fail for those same reasons, because there's no system, there's no structure, and there's no support. And without those things being there, at the very least, it's some sort of a system to fall back on, then, like you said, when those feelings fade, as they do, there's no support system there for us.
Yeah. So, I mean, you think about a kid, like you want your kid to be focused, and maybe even the kid wants to be focused, but their life, their schedule, whatever, is chaos. So without even correcting that or identifying it so that they can become a little bit more focused, it doesn't matter how much willpower the kid has, it's going to be very difficult for them to be focused.
Yeah. And with adults, a lot of times people just want to be in shape. I want to be in better shape. Firstly, I think that one step on the path that you need to do is identify, what does that actually mean to you? You need to clarify that. But then, a very small thing that you can implement as part of a system is you just lay your clothes out. Like, let's say you want to go for a run. You lay your clothes out and your shoes out right next to your bed. That way, when you get up in the morning, it's already ready for you. You don't have to take that extra mental energy, that extra mental load in order to pick your clothes out, to find your shoes. It's already there. You do it at night. It's so much easier to do those things at night, and then you are prepping yourself for the morning time to succeed and to excel and further on the path of what that habit is, because that's the system. At night, you set your clothes out. You're ready to go. If it's going to the gym or going to for a run. That thing, whatever that thing is for you, you set it up at night. That way in the morning time, it's so easy to do. It's harder to not do than it is to do, because it's already ready for yourself.
Well, there's a mental energy that you have to put in every single day. So if you wake up in the morning, to your point, you wake up in the morning, you don't know what you're going to wear, you're running around, you're trying to there's just that mental energy that gets spent so quickly. But if you think of, like, okay, so Steve Jobs, when I say Steve Jobs, what outfit do you even think of when I say that?
Blue jeans and a black turtleneck.
Yes. And there's so many people that wear the same thing over and over and over again because, well, one, it really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, to a certain degree. But two, there's just mental power that they're not spending because they know exactly what they're going to wear. Now, maybe your job as an adult, you have to wear different clothes every single day. Nice thing for us is, man, we get to go around in our pajamas all the time, right? So we go barefoot in our pajamas, our karate uniform. We don't have to think about, there's no mental power that's being spent. And quite honestly, I wish that every job had an outfit that you had to wear. Every school had an outfit that you had to wear, because then you would, like, that would not even be something that you had to think about, to be quite honest with you. And if I could wear this, like, my wife and I kind of had this back and forth a little bit, but if I could wear the same thing every single day, I certainly would be fine. In fact, probably on a few different podcasts, you've seen me in this TriStar zip up, or you've seen me just in our TriStar shirt, just because I wear them almost every single day. I probably don't most often I don't wear them on the weekend, but I'm not spending my mental energy trying to figure out what I'm going to wear.
Right. And I think you're saying mental energy. And I think the other way that people maybe have heard this before is decision fatigue, right? Throughout the day, there's so many decisions that we have to make, right? Decisions about what we're wearing. What are we going to, feed our kids in the morning time? What are we going to eat? What path am I going to take to work? Do I need to get gas before work or after? All of these decisions that you make on any given day, and it all builds a mental load, and you get burnt out. You get burnt out making these very simple, mundane decisions, because it has to happen over and over and over again. And then you go to bed, you wake up the next morning, and it's all the same stuff. So if you could take some of that out, especially in the morning times, because morning time, all right, so morning time, you wake up, you're not like, most people are not waking up and they're like, all right, I'm jumping out of the bed and I'm ready to go and start my day. Okay. Those people are a little crazy. Sorry if you're one of those people, but
I am.
You're one of those people. You wake
Yeah,
up, you're
but as
ready to
soon as
go.
I wake up, I'm ready to go.
Mm. Not everybody is like that. Not everybody. So even before your morning coffee, you're bouncing off the walls. You're ready.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
and this is probably too graphic, but it's because I'm regular. So like as soon
Uh,
as I wake up, man, I'm I'm ready to go.
Very good. Uh, so, in order for the rest of us to kind of deal with that, we don't always wake up and we're excited, bouncing off the walls, and have all this energy. So, the morning time is where, and listen, everybody's going to have a different energy peak to your day. And if you haven't heard about that, I think that's something that you could do some research on. Find out, and maybe we do an episode on this in the future. But find out where your peak, um, your prime time is, right? Where is your
Yes.
prime hours, right? Where are you the most focused? Where are you able to do the most amount of work? But almost never is that very first thing in the morning. So if you offload some of those thinking process, some of those decisions to later in the day, then you can have that slow start to your day, which is maybe a little bit more normal for everybody else. But I think that decision fatigue is the phrase, and it absolutely is a real thing. Absolutely is a real thing.
Yeah.
I know for me, if I take the kids and we're on a vacation somewhere, we're going to some event, we're driving. For me, that driving time, especially if we're on the highway or whatever, by the time I get to where we're going, I let my wife drive around in the towns or wherever we're at, and then I drive back home. Because by the time I get there, I'm like, my the decision fatigue, I guess, is what I'm relating this to, from driving, from being at 8 or 9 on your focus scale and paying attention. You get a watch out for these stupid drivers that are all over. Like it just is a lot. And so for me, that's the thing we do in my family. I do the driving to the destination. My wife does the driving around, and then I drive back home. Just because I kind of need that mental reprieve by the time we get there to kind of cool down a little bit, to kind of get back to my normal baseline self before I can go on. But that's something that I know, and I put a sort of a system in place in order to facilitate the aftermath of that decision fatigue. But we all have been there, being so spent on decisions where I can't do it. So just offload some of that stuff, right? And if you do those things at nighttime, then it sets you up for the morning time. And I know this is a concept that I have talked about in the past, that the nighttime version of ourselves is often different from the morning time version of yourself. I mean, think about this. How many times have you went to bed and thought, okay, yep, I'm going to get up at this time and I'm going to do all these things, and you get up in the morning, you're like, I don't know what that night guy was thinking, but I'm going back to bed. Right. And it's almost like you have a duality there. Like your nighttime version of yourself is setting you up for success, but the morning time version of yourself is sabotaging yourself. And that's an interesting kind of counterplay that, again, maybe it would be a whole nother episode. But all that to say is decision fatigue is a real thing. If you can put those
Yes.
decisions where you are a little bit more awake and aware and kind of thinking about what's going on, and set yourself up for success, as long as you don't have that self-sabotaging nature about yourself in the morning time, more often than not, that'll be better for you.
So I know we keep talking about systems, and maybe we kind of need to define what we mean by that. And I think it's apparent or evident what it is, but let's just, put a definition, if you will, but just so that the listeners are on the same page as us, just in case. But, a system is something that is repeatable, and it allows you to make the right actions every single time. And I would say, within that, it's also, in most cases, easy actions.
And let me add to that. It sometimes takes the chaos out of the decisions, because it's not so much a decision, it is your normal system. You just fall into that system. And sometimes without systems, without knowing what's going on, that's where the chaos comes in. So I think that an additive part to that is systems help to take the chaos out of your sometimes normal day and make it a easy rinse and repeat type of measure.
Agreed. And you want it to be like, to me, it's not fancy. It's not complicated. It's just, well, it's predictable. Like it gets the job done. However the system was created, it gets the job done.
And of course, relying on willpower is a terrible strategy. Systems don't rely on mood. They rely on structure. And I think that is the key difference between having a system and then not having a system.
Yeah, and we utilize systems all the time in the studio. I mean, if you think about it, we have a system of respect. What is that? Well, we bow in and out of class. We bow to our partners. We even shake hands and say, thank you, sir, or thank you, ma'am, to our line leaders or to our partners. I mean, we have systems. That's just one out of many.
Well, and you can even zoom out a little bit. So we have 3 months in each quarter of a material that we're learning, and like one of the other kind of overarching system to the program is in month one we are learning the information. In month number 2, we are reviewing, rehearsing, and putting in the reps on whatever that information is. And then month 3, we're doing the stripe testing and then leading right up to that belt test. And I think that that is the overarching system. And then we have all kinds of little micro systems or smaller systems that are facilitating that larger goal of allowing the students to have an opportunity to best learn these moves, to have lots of repetition on these moves, and to ultimately learn them in such a way that allows them to test and excel so they can make it to the next level, not just the next belt level, but the next level for themselves as well. So they can kind of unlock the next information so they can go on and learn that. And then they start that system over again. It just rinses and repeats like we talked about.
Yeah. And I was going to say, it also builds on top of it, like, along with its rinse and repeat, but it builds, and quite honestly, without those systems, the studio would be chaos. Like if we didn't have certain ways that you line up and the way that you do these drills, and like if there weren't, even like you had brought up the microsystems, even if those microsystems were not there, there'd be chaos.
Well, okay, so you can even take that like while martial arts, martial meaning sort of returning to military, think about what the military would be like if there was no structure or systems in place for that. It would chaos, absolutely chaos. And so absolutely, yes, we have to have those systems in place so the chaos isn't there. And I think that even down to having a lesson plan and then following that lesson plan, that's not something really that the students, well, they do interact with. Maybe they're not aware of. They're not always aware of the lesson plan, but we have a lesson plan down to the day and the minute and the class, the whole deal about, not that a blind mouse could go in there and teach the class, but I mean, somebody could absolutely fill in for whoever the instructor is and say, okay, these are the things we have to do today. We do this for 10 minutes. We do this for 5 minutes. And the whole system is right there. And the nice thing is for that is that's the structure that allows.
Yeah, I was going to say that the overarching to the lesson plan is the curriculum. And then from the curriculum, to your point, we have lesson plans.
Yeah. And it just breaks it down to that next level so that everybody can, again, learn the information, have app time to review and have that repetition on, and then test and qualify for their next level.
And then the guesswork is out. There's, I keep calling it mental energy. You say it's decision fatigue, which it is. Now there's no fatigue with that because we know exactly I don't have to think about what we're teaching because it's all written out.
And the other nicety for us as the instructors is we have 4 quarters of the year. While we are basically teaching the same stuff, like the curriculum doesn't necessarily change over those 4 quarters, as white belts still have to learn these set of moves. But for us, those 4 quarters are and do differ a little bit in the specifics of the drills and the skills that we're doing, and that helps to keep it fresh for us. But there's not much thinking that's involved in that because we just follow the path. This is quarter number 1, we do this. Quarter number 2, we do this, and that makes it keeps it somewhat fresh for us, but also maintains that kind of system component so that we can continue on that, and there's no chaos.
Yeah, and it's funny. I wonder how many parents, kids generally, they're not thinking like this, but I wonder how many parents now, or maybe I guess before this podcast, but especially now go, oh yeah, I guess, they do this, and that is a system. And I see that that's important, I guess. And then maybe like the next question for them is like, okay, so how do I apply this? I mean, we can get into this a little bit later, but how do I apply this into my daily life for my kid? And then even eventually, for myself as well.
Yeah. And I think and that's certainly a component that we're going to talk about. And probably, I think we do a really good job about following this without it being like a script that we're reading, right? So, and what I mean by that is we are comfortable enough with the lesson plan and with the material itself that we
Yeah.
are not reading from a script as we're teaching the class. We're just teaching the class, and we have a script that we're following, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but it all falls under the system, the structure that was created. And look, truth be told, in the beginning, I just knew what everybody, and we were small enough. I just knew what everybody needed to know at each belt level. I just went in and taught. And it wasn't until I started having other people that wanted to help and teach and those type of things, where I had to create that structure where you can't. I mean, you were with me enough that you could read my mind, meaning like you knew probably what I was thinking or what we were going to do next, for the most part, just because we had worked together hand in glove. But I didn't have that same relationship that I had with you going through the ranks that, with some of the other instructors. We worked together so much more and closely than some of the other ones. And so we had to eventually come up and go, okay, like I have to put the curriculum. I always had the curriculum on paper, but now I got to do a lesson plan. And, not only do we have to have a lesson plan, now the lesson plan has to be like, okay, we're going to do this for, like you had brought up, 10 minutes and 5 minutes and 4 minutes, but it has to build so that there's success at the end of it. But truth be told, I didn't have that in the beginning. It was just, I went in and taught.
Right. And you, I'm sure, had some sort of idea of where us as the students needed to be at the end. And so then you just kind of worked backwards in order to say, okay, these are the things we have to do. This is the curriculum. These are the hoops I need them to jump through. Now they need to be able to do that. How do we do that? So we practice this, we practice. And so you're making it, but instead of it being on a tangible piece of paper that everybody can see, nobody needed to see it. It was just you. So you had it, I'm sure, in your head, at the very least, a loose form plan of what's going to happen, as opposed to showing up to class, man, I don't know. What are we going to do today? I wonder. I doubt that ever happened. If it did, and if it did, it certainly didn't come across that way at all.
Yeah, no, I don't know that it did. I mean, especially back then, I pretty much, I knew exactly what I taught everybody. It's so much so that I could say I don't ever remember saying this to you, but saying to other students, "No, I just taught you that last class, and you don't know it yet." Like,
I find myself still saying those things today.
Yeah, but the whole point of this is that we, out of necessity, for the studio to grow, for our students to grow, for our instructors to grow from students to be instructors, we had to create this, I'll say this system, the curriculum into the lesson plans. And there's way more than that, just because we also have a system how to teach people how to teach, through our Storm team. But the point to what we're talking about is the system had to be created in order for us to have and be able to produce black belts on a regular basis through a certain period of time, so long as the student themselves did the work inside the system, knew what they were supposed to do, and was able to pass the test. And I think the carryover to that for our students and parents is, like you had said, you had an end in mind. This is what I want it to look like. Chunk it down, break it down backwards. This is the last step that needs to happen. This is the second to the last step, all the way to what the actual first step would be. And that's how you create your system.
Right. And of course, systems help to create an environment where the habits can survive and where success is inevitable. And I think that especially with the lesson plans that we have as they are today, really help to facilitate that for our students, and almost in an easy kind of way. Yeah, the students have to show up. Yeah, they have to do a little bit of work, but it makes it really repeatable to get the same type of results from quarter to quarter, from year to year, from belt to belt. So brown belts are always doing this information at this percentage through the quarter, and all of that means it's really repeatable. And I think that is a key to systems, especially as they relate to the lesson plans that we have.
Now, remind me, because I know we talked about this, but we want to talk about, because this is a two-parter. So I know we're going to talk about kids today in this podcast. But are we hitting on adults
We
yet, or
have
we're going
kids
to just do?
and adults. We'll hit a little bit. On the next one, we're going to talk about how these structures can be applied a little bit more
Okay.
at home. And I think that that'll be a really something that the listeners are going to want to catch in on. But you're right. Kids need systems and structure, right? That's really going to be something that kids are going to. It doesn't matter if ADD or ADHD is there or not, especially if it is. I think that those systems and structure are so important and helpful. And and this next thing. Listen, as I say this doesn't necessarily only just apply to kids. I think this is across the board. And this is a quote from James Clear, Atomic Habits. We don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems, right? So we have to have that system in place. You want me to say it again? I'll say it again.
I do,
we
because
have to have those systems in place, and that is so important. So listen, we don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. Think about it in sporting. Basketball team A and basketball team B. I'm using A and B because I don't follow sports at all. I couldn't think of two teams off the top of my head. So team A and team B, their goal is both to win the game. They go to the game, they want to win the game. It doesn't mean that this person had a better, or this team A had a better vision board, or these guys had a better, listen, it falls on their system. What system do they have in place to set their skills up so that they can win that game? Everybody's going to have the same goal. Right? We all have the same goal. We want to excel, we want to achieve more, all of those things. But unless we have the system in place in order for those skills, in order for those habits, in order for those practices to actually happen, then it's not going to happen. It doesn't matter how hard I wish and hope and dream for it to be. It's not going to be. I have to put the system in place in order for that thing to be the outcome.
Yeah, it reminds me of, again, I think I bring him up every single podcast, but Zig Ziglar, you got to be before you can do, and you got to do before you can have. And first part is being, like, I gotta believe that I can be this, but then I got to start doing. So if I want to be a doctor, I got to make the decision. Yeah, I want to be a doctor, but now I got to start doing the things that a doctor would do in order to become a doctor. What is that? Well, I got to follow this system because I got to get, these grades, and I've got to get into this school, and then I've got to follow this system. And it's all a framework inside of these systems, whether it's like a daily, weekly, monthly routine, whatever it is, there has to be these strong systems that are set in place for you to be able to succeed. Again, falling back to the best of your ability, making them simple, making them easy, making them repeatable, so that you can have that framework to succeed inside of that.
Well, I think, can tell me the Zig quote one more time?
Yeah, you got to be before you can do, and then you got to do before you can have. So it's be, do, and have.
Right. And I think the be part is the mental model, right? So we have to be, so we have to mentally be there. And then what that means is, at least for me, is if we can visualize that thing to happen, then we will automatically start to make the steps in order to become that thing that we're visualizing, right? We have to be that thing. We have to visualize it. We have to become that type of person. We start thinking like that person. We start to walk like that person. We start to dress like, and all of those things start to set your mind in the path or in the right direction in order to end up at that thing. And so I think that the be part is, not that the other ones aren't important, but that first part is really important. And that's the mental model, and widely important. Okay. So we got off topic a little bit. Kids and systems. What would be, do you think, some key systems that would be helpful, at the very least, if not wildly helpful, for kids to start to adopt?
Well, everybody has some sort of system. So at nighttime, when the kids are going to bed, there is a system that they're following. There is a pattern that they're following. Now, whether or not that pattern or system is setting them up for success to have a good night's sleep and wake up the next morning and have success, now that's the question. But we all have some sort of pattern or some sort of system, knowingly or unknowingly, willingly or unwillingly, we have them. And so analyzing what you already have and then deciding, okay, is this really the system that's setting me up for success? And as a kid, you probably need your parents to help you, unless you're old enough to comprehend some of this. But the systems, I think, have to be predictable. It's got to be a predictable daily system. A place like, let's just say schoolwork. There should be a place that you always do your schoolwork. I know when it was me, it was the kitchen table, or it's excuse me, the dining room table. And so when I'd come home from school, I'd have to sit at the dining room table, partly because, my parents didn't want me sitting in front of the TV and doing my homework. But when you do those things, then it like if you have a place, let's just say it's a dining room table, then when you sit down there, that at that time of day, that's exactly what you do. And that puts your mindset, again, you got to be before you can do it. Put your mindset, okay, now I'm studying, I'm doing my homework so that I can be this type of person, so I can have this. I'm not trying to throw that back in there, but it does fit. So having predictable daily routine, setting up a place, like I said, to do your schoolwork. Bedtime is huge, right?
Well, I think
a bedtime routine is huge.
Having a bedtime routine not only is helpful for the kids, it's also sneakily a little bit helpful for the parents as well, because if there's a routine, okay, you got to brush your teeth, you do whatever your routine is, but that's kind of system will, okay, the kids start doing this and they do this, and then it will lead them to naturally, okay, now I'm like, they're already priming themselves. The kids, they realize, okay, it's bedtime, I brush my teeth, I do my prayer or my whatever that thing is, that system for your kids, then the bedtime is the last thing. And so you start that system, then it just continues down the path. And as long as you don't interrupt any things in that system, it has to be consistent in order for that to happen, but that will help to prime them to be into that sleeping mode. I think the other part to this, especially for the kids, is to have some sort of a visual reminder. And the refrigerator is where most people put this, is some sort of a chart or checklist or reward stickers that will visually say, okay, hey, listen, I still need to do X today, or I need to read today, I need to whatever that thing is. But the kids like that kind of visibility, the tangible part to it. They can see it. Then they can, after they get to be a little bit older, they can start to do those things on their own. That's where we get to win as a parent, because then they're starting to do these things on their own. Yes, they're getting some sort of reward for it. They get that check mark or the star on their chart, which is a little bit of a endorphin rush for them. And think about, for us as adults, we complete a task or a project, we check that box, man, that feels so good. That is the same type of feeling that the kids get when they get that star on their chart. So that don't think that isn't as important as it is, because it's very important to have a visual reminder. And again, somewhere that is a staple in your house. Again, more often than not, the refrigerator is the place where this would live. Some sort of a chart that just gives them an idea of the chores, the tasks, the things for them to be responsible for. Then you start those stars, and that again really does something for the kids, because then they can see it's tangible for them.
Yeah, and I would add to that too, that when they are doing those things, that again, it should be consistent. The consistent encouragement should be put upon the actions as opposed to the accomplishments. And so what I mean by that is, great job brushing your teeth. Okay, that's actually putting the praise on the accomplishment as opposed to the action. So, man, I love it that hygiene is really important to you. So you're what you're doing is you're praising the action as opposed to the reward, if you will. So it's kind of like if you were going to take this at the studio, for instance. And look, I'm not knocking some parents that say, man, you got first place today, or your form looked the best. And that maybe has its place, but what would be more beneficial is rewarding the action. Man, I really loved how hard you worked today. I saw that it was tough for you, but you kept pushing forward. Or, yeah, you can acknowledge, they had a little competition, you got first place. I'm happy for you. But what I'm most proud of is that you worked your hardest and you did your best, like whatever it is. But so the rewards should be, and the encouragement should be based upon the action, not the accomplishment. Does that kind of make sense?
It does, and so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what I think I'm picking up on is you sort of, as the parent, you want to kind of identify the core qualities that you want your kid to have: hard work or hygiene, whatever those things are, and moreover, praising how good their form looked or something like that. You praise the hard work because you can't always look the best, because somebody's always going to be bigger, bagger, faster, stronger than us. But we can always strive to work hard. It's not always the brushing the teeth that's going to be the thing for the kids. It is going to be for a window of time, but after that window, brushing your teeth is just a normal thing. So that hygiene part then moves into putting deodorant on or whatever the next steps are for the hygiene. And so coming up with kind of what, like, okay, again, we're kind of working backwards again. What do you want the end product for the product is maybe not the right phrase there, but what do you want the end result of your kid to be when they go to step out onto the real life or to get their job? What do you want everybody to be talking about for them? Well, they want them to be hard worker. Don't want them to smell bad. So hygiene is important. Whatever those things are, then you just, even if they're 3 or 4, you start to instill those things as tenets, as pillars to who they are and on their core self now at a young age. Then the byproduct of that is when they get to be old enough to have a job, and those things are just built into them, right? They're already there, and it doesn't really matter where the kid is, across the board. You can start that anywhere, even if the kids are adults. It would be harder because it's going to feel fake and weird at first, for sure, but it's absolutely still something that can happen, especially as the parents. You always have that opportunity to deliver on those things. By deliver on those things, I mean to praise the characteristics that you want your kid to have. Again, no matter where they are in the age. Did I get that right?
Absolutely. So, and then, I would say the other inverse to that, which is just as important, the consistent encouragement, but also consistent consequences. So, when parents, and we've had this before, if you do that again, I'm going to talk with Mr. Brumitt, or I'm going to talk with, Mr. Beane about that. And then they never do. And I'm using that as a specific example because what that probably also means is the parent is not consistent with other consequences that are happening in the house as well. So we have to that is a system that has to be consistent. And then again, you're to use James Clear's phrase, and I'll put the word kids in. Kids don't rise to the level of their goals. They fall to the level of their systems. And so if that system is broken, meaning that we're not following through with what we're saying is going to happen, you do that again and X, Y, Z is going to happen. Your child by nature will fall to the level of that system. And I know that makes maybe the hearer of this kind of feel bad, but it's true.
And I think that's where the accountability comes in. And we have to, we want our kids to be upstanding people, want them to be able to be accountable for themselves. So that means that sometimes we have to hold them accountable for the things and hold ourselves accountable too for the things that we said that we were going to do. We have to do them. And what that means is then you might have to do a little bit of self-editing. So you don't just say the first things that come out of your head, especially when you're upset or frustrated, whatever the situation is. But you have to actually pause for a second, then say that important thing or that whatever that thing is before you say something that you don't necessarily want to be able to fulfill on anyways. You have to be accountable. You have to both be accountable to yourself. You have to be accountable to the kids and be able to remember what you said last time and then fulfill on that this time.
It reminds me of, I think it was our last podcast, and I forget the term we put on it, but again, I had referred to Zig Ziglar with this is you can't tailor make your situations in life, but you can tailor make your responses to certain situations in life. So having that system and how you're going to respond. And I don't know if you remember this, but I had used the phrase on that podcast when somebody says, what was it? Bless their heart.
Yes.
And then the other day we were on the phone. I'm driving. I was talking to you on the phone. And do you remember that I said this guy just cut me off.
Yes.
And then what did I say to you?
Bless his heart.
Bless his heart. Yeah. So, yes. Yeah. But I said that out of joking because that's not necessarily my system, but it's so true. You're going to, when you operate in those systems, those things start to come out. And I think we can all agree that one system that a kid needs is a clean environment,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, and
Making sure that
whether that's clean as in clean and tidy, or clean as in not dirty, right? Because clean could be you have a couple different variants of what that means, but that clear space, I think, leads into a clear mind, and that's not just for the kids; that's for the adults too. It's interesting how a lot of these things for the kids help the adults, and a lot of things for the kids help or a lot of things for the adults help the kids, because it's all as a family, you are a family unit. So those things are kind of integrally tied to one another, because we are the parents. And so as the parent, if we can help to keep our space clean, the house clean, then we'll be able to be clear minded as we approach certain things, and the kids will be much more clear minded, because there's not all that clutter, physical clutter, and then the mental clutter that goes along with those things. To me, that speaks on like open loops, right? And that's a um, I'm blanking on his name. That's another productivity concept, is to have closed loops. And when you have those open loops, and that's that mental, that cognitive load that's ongoing, right? It doesn't have an opportunity to end, to close. So you want to be able to close those things, and cleaning is one of those things that really leads into an open loop, and so that cognitive load is always there.
yeah, and we are a product for the most part. I would say we're a product of our environment, and as a kid, who who are they around the most?
The parents.
Yeah. And so, because they're surrounded by the parent or parents, they're going to model whatever behaviors and whatever systems that you're creating. They're going to see those, and they're going to take them, and they're going to duplicate them. And so, the question is, what kind of systems do you want your kids to borrow from their parents? Because a kid system is really just all it is it's a borrowed system of the parent. And if it's for lack of a better term, if it's a bad system or a broken system, the kid, in most cases, depending on their age, they don't know that. They're just borrowing the system. And then they're repeating those same things. And it sounds like I'm dogging the parents out, and I don't mean to do that. But just realize that we are the example. Up until a certain age, we're the example, and they're borrowing those systems from us and then creating their own based upon what they borrowed from us.
Well, okay, so I'm going to underline that just a little bit. Think about kids when they're real little, they play house. And how do they know to play house? How do they know the roles that they're going to be in, whether it's a girl playing the mom or the boy playing the dad? How do they know those things? They know those things from watching their parents, and the way that we interact, the way that we act as the dad or the mom, whatever your role is, then the kids are going to be picking up on those things, and inevitably they're going to go and play house. They're going to be emulating the things that they see mom and dad do at home. And then we have to be very aware of what we're doing, how we're doing it, what the tone is, all of those key things, because that's how, okay, so you can extrapolate that out a little bit. That boy that goes and plays house and pretends to be dad, and however dad's acting, that kid is going to act. But as they get older, that's their image of what dad is. And so that's their frame of reference. That's the mold that they're going to try to step into, because that's what they know. That's the dad. I'm a dad now. I'm going to act like my dad. I mean, how many times as a parent have you said, well, I sound just like my mom, or I sound just like my dad? Because we fall back on those things. And as many times you say, I'm never going to act like this, or I'm never going to you do those things. And you do those things because you say, man, I sound just like my dad, or I sound just like my mom. Those things have such a lasting imprint on us. And so us as the parents, we have to be very aware of how we are sharing those things to the kids. And it can change. We can change that mold. We don't have to necessarily step in there, but it's a very conscious decision that has to happen, and it's a very conscious effort that has to happen continuously to not accidentally step back into that role that you maybe don't want to do.
So, okay, with adults, would you say the adults, um, uh, I mean, most adults have goals. They love goals, right?
I think so. And I think that goals for adults give them a heading. So wherever and we talk about goals as it relates to a target to hit. The goal is the target for the adult to hit. And okay, so goals are something that adults strive for, but goals don't have adults back unless they're supported, and that support comes from those systems, right? So we have to have,
Yes.
as an adult, we have to have a system that is there, that is strong, that is able to be the support for us to continue to reach and strive and continue aiming at that goal.
Well, and you had brought this up, but that's why, if you do have that, then your morning routine isn't chaotic, right? If you have the right night routine, then generally your morning routine isn't chaotic. If you have, like, I don't know about you, do you have a place where you put your, let's say your car keys or your shoes or your wallet, or like, I mean, do you have a system when you come home that you follow?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
there's been one time where I've lost my keys, and truthfully, I honestly, I think I accidentally threw them away. They got caught into something I was throwing away. I think that's where they went, because man, they are nowhere to be found. But other than that one occasion,
but
I don't think
was
I've
that
ever lost my keys.
was that when you were riding your bike?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
came home
Okay.
that day. I was riding my bike. I came home that day. I went to put I think I had a crock pot or something. I was putting in the garbage, and I had my keys on my backpack that had my stuff in it for work. And I lifted it up, and this is my looking back at it probable thing that happened. I went to lift it and put it into the garbage can, because I've got these gigantic garbage cans now, because whatever. Anyways, but I think it got caught on that, boop, and it went in the garbage, and I didn't even know it. But other than that, I have not lost my keys in very, very rarely throughout my entire adult life. And now the system that I have for the keys is even more refined than what it has been in the past.
So, okay, and the reason I brought that up is because not only do you have a system, and again, back to my point, we all have systems. Everybody has a system on what they do with their key, their shoes, their wallet, purse, whatever. The question is that system serving you? Is that system, providing what it is that you want it to provide? And I'm just using, those as examples, because if they're not, then you need to change that system to correlate to what you're looking to get out of it. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And I think we've all been there, where we're in the morning, we need to leave, and well, where's my coat? Where's my shoes? Most of the time we're experiencing this through the kids, because they don't have very good systems for those things. Where's your left shoe at? You have the right shoe. Where's, do you take them off together? Like, how do you lose one shoe? But all of those things happen. And so as an adult, we don't want to be like that. So having a system of a conscious place where we are always putting the keys, or always putting the shoes, or the wallet, the purse, whatever those things are for you, you need to have a system there so that you are not chaotic, particularly in the morning or when you are in a rush to leave somewhere, because you know where all your stuff is, because you keep track of it because of that system.
How about weekly planning? Like for like having that ritual, having that system. That's, I would say that's really important to do. I don't know when you do it, if you do it on Sunday night, taking a look, do you and Ashley get together and go, this is what we have coming up this week? Do you like have regular meetings? I mean, I know what Debbie and I do, but
me and Ashley, we do a kind of a monthly look. And it doesn't always happen at the beginning of the month. Sometimes it's at the middle of the month, just because of what's going on. Especially,
and you're more digital, right? Like, you both are more digital, where you're probably sharing calendars and stuff.
We absolutely do, but it starts on paper, and primarily the topic that we're trying to figure out is always, okay, what's going on with the kids? Where the kids are going here on this day, and the kids are going there on this day, and having that kind of system in place, and having that opportunity for us to look at for a month, and we kind of get those situated so that all the people who are watching, the kids, the whole army that's there to help to facilitate that, are ready, they're prepared, but also we know where we're taking the kids on any given day, and that is important. But as it relates to me, I do a planning process. Sometimes it's on Saturday night, sometimes it's on Sunday nights. It depends on kind of the things that are going on. But before the week starts, before Monday, I have a kind of an action plan of what the week is going to look like. And sometimes it starts as just kind of the big, the key things that are going to happen on the day. So, on Monday through Friday, I might just have one thing that's on those days. Sometimes there's a couple things, and especially on Saturdays and Sundays, those are a little bit more full than not. But on most of the days, there's just one thing. And then as the week goes, I go back, I reference that. That gives me an opportunity to check in and make sure, okay, these are the things I need to do. I can keep track of those things, but then I'm adding to those things as well. So, okay, this didn't happen on this day. I'm going to move it over. Now it's on this day. And I think that we talked about decision fatigue, doing that before the week starts, not only does it prime you for success that week, because you're already thinking about the things that you have to do. You're not going to be losing things. You're not going to be, missing out on key things that you said you're going to do. So you can be held accountable to what you said you were going to do. But on top of that, by setting that, it also gives you an opportunity to have a goal to shoot for the week. And if you want to take that weekly planning routine a little bit, like one step further, what is my goal for the week? What is my overarching theme for the week? Maybe would be another way. And I think theme sometimes is more fun than a goal. But you have a theme for the week. My theme for this week is to be gracious and be thankful for all the things that I have. And so constantly through the week, I'm looking at my weekly routine and being gracious, being thankful is the tenet for the week, the theme. And so throughout my day, I'm looking at those things, and I can be thankful as the day goes. And of course, that goes to the gratitude practice we talked about a few episodes ago, I think, where you have that gratitude sandwich where you have something in the morning, you have something in the evening time, and you kind of sandwich those things together. But having a theme like that helps and makes the week go a little bit faster, but also gives you your week a purpose. And I think sometimes life blends all together, and we don't know necessarily always where one week ends and another week starts. That planning ritual really helps with that. But having a theme for the week, I think, helps to keep that a little bit more exciting. At least a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. What about so obviously we're on the same page with this too, is a consistent bedtime schedule, having this sleep schedule. I know, like I can tell you that usually by 9:30, I mean, I'm ready for bed, and I'm up at 6 o'clock. Like that's my, and I usually go to bed at 10 anyways, but sometimes I'm ready to fall asleep at 9:30, and that's just because I have that regular routine. And just because I quote unquote can stay up later on the weekends doesn't mean that I do that. And more often than not, I would say probably 9 times out of 10, I'm in bed by 10 o'clock just because I'm tired, but also because I've created that consistent sleep schedule for myself.
I would say yes, but yes.
You're in a different season in life than I am in.
Yes. Up until the birth of my newest daughter, I did have a pretty consistent sleep schedule. Now my sleep schedule is much more, much less consistent. I do still sleep at nighttime, so that part's consistent. I don't most of the time take any naps during the day, so that part's also consistent. But as far as the timing goes, it is not consistent, and it is also not for a consistent amount of time. Like, I don't fall asleep at this time and stay asleep until this time, because babies do what they want to do, and we are there to help.
And then other systems too, you can set up automations. With regards to like reminders, bill pays, reoccurring tasks. What I love was I was mentioning to you, this was probably a year ago, 2 years ago, whichever it was, and I was saying that I needed to remember to do X, Y, and Z. But the problem was, I by the time I needed to remember to do it, I didn't remember to do it. And you go, well, you can say to your phone, hey, I have an iPhone. I'm not going to say the name of the program, but and then I can just say, remind me to X, Y, and Z. And it was funny because I didn't know I could do that with my phone. And you're like, yeah, that was a neat thing that allowed me to automate some stuff and remember things that I would not have. Because I didn't have a sheet of paper down with me at that time or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I use that feature so much. And the cool part is, not only do you say, hey, remind me at such and such time, you can say, remind me when I get home to pay this bill, right? And,
yes.
And your devices are always aware and tracking where you're at. So you get home, it knows where home is. Okay, hey, bloop. Oh, yeah, hey, yep, I got to remember to pay that bill. Or at such and such time, I need to do XYZ, all of those things. And our brain is really good at having ideas, not very good at storing those ideas. So having some sort of way to get them out while they're present minded we all have those, if you have a smartwatch or you have your phone with you all the time, and boop, you just talk to it. All right, great. Then you don't have to remember that thing anymore. Again, that takes that cognitive load off. That decision fatigue is down a little bit, because I don't have to try to always consistently remember those things, because they're just, I remembered it. Great. I got to do it. I put it in action. All right, great. Now I don't have to worry about it anymore, because it's done. That part's done.
Yeah, I even created a reminder or a thing in the reminders for a shopping list, and then that's automatically tagged, with Debbie. So, she no longer has to say to me, what is there anything that you need from the store? Because anytime I need it, I just say, hey, so and so, put this on my shopping list, and then boom, it goes right on there, and then she's able to just pull it up, and when she's at the store, because she mostly goes. We go sometimes together, but mostly she goes, and then she can just check it off, and then it deletes on my end as well. Like that was,
well, and
that was so easy.
We use that same function too, and now the reminders app, the thing that actually does that processing, is really got some improvement. So inside that app, you have your grocery list or shopping list, and it will put all of the like-minded things together. And so you have all of the groceries together. You have all of the beauty stuff, or it segments it out. So you go to the grocery store, and it's like, okay, all of this stuff, and it's all by each other at the store. So you just put all that stuff, and you go to the next thing. It makes it easy enough that I can go grocery shop and I don't mess stuff up, because that would be always the thing. I would forget something, or I would buy too much of this or whatever. But having that list in there makes it really easy for anybody to do the grocery shopping, as long as you're putting things on the list, and that's kind of the crux of the whole thing. But that reminders app is really, really powerful and beneficial. And most people are not using, even I am not using it near to the potential that somebody could be using it, but it is very helpful.
I agree. Well, I know that we're going to move on to the second part to this soon, but anything you want to say before we close this one out? And I do want to bring this up. I just want to remind adults to take a look at the system, because you're doing it. Take a look at the systems that you're already doing and see if they are serving you in the way that you want them to serve you. And if not, change it.
Right. So
and then the same thing with your kids.
Self-audit.
Yeah. And the same thing with your kids. Look at the systems that they're doing. And then get them involved, especially if they're a certain age where you can actually get them involved and go, hey, I see you're doing X, Y, and Z, and this is the end result. Is this really what you're looking to have happen? And if it isn't, they'll go, no, it's not. Now, if they don't understand the question, you might have to show it to them and ask different questions to get to the answer that you're looking for. But getting them involved into helping create a new system will empower them, and it's also a good teaching tool, meaning that they're learning how to take a look within on what's happening, and without, meaning outside what's happening, and how to connect the two so that they're able to create things that are going to move them forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think as adults, we start with that self-audit. Ask yourself what's working, what's not working. Where are you feeling that stress, the tension, the chaos at? And then you just kind of let that sit for a little bit, and you do the same thing for the kids. And then the next part is then you start to, okay, what type of system can I put in place here? What do I want it to look like? And then you kind of work backwards. And I think that leads us right into like what we're going to talk about next week. Next week, we're going to, of course, continue this conversation, but we're also going to kind of help and provide you with a blueprint that you can follow to start building these systems for yourself, but also for your family.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that'll be very powerful. I know it will be. It's going to be very powerful for the listener. All right, sir. Well, I appreciate you. And I know you appreciate me because you're focused on gratitude this week. So
yes, sir.
I'm giving you a hard time.
Well, hey, listen, listeners, I'm excited to have that, to finish off this conversation with you, to bring you in and to help to allow you to build some blueprints for yourself to make these systems and hopefully help your life, the kids' life, all become easier, because that's the goal with systems. Thanks for joining the TriStar podcast, where black belts begin at home. Connect with our community by visiting tristarkarate.com. Follow us on social media and share this episode with a family who's ready to grow stronger together. Until next time, stay focused, stay faithful, and keep training like a champion.